What is one thing you're so hid from you until later in the relationship? My now husband acted like he knew how to grill steaks and just casually grabbed steaks and asked me how I liked mine and then made perfect steaks. Then continued making perfect steaks for months. Then years. And I just learned a month or so ago that the first time he made steaks for me was the first time he'd made steaks in his life. He'd just studied up intensely because he felt that I would be impressed by him making me a good steak. I thought he had been making steaks for years to throw down a perfect steak like it was no big thing. But it turned out he did a ton of research and was sweating bullets trying to get it right. He's the best. Kind of relevant story. I brought a girl over for a dinner date and cooked a steak that had been in my fridge for like 4 days. It was about to turn. But it was fine. I work in a meat shop and it was cut fresh when I got it. But I was kind of worried. Steak turned out fine. She loved it. Nothing happened that night. Next morning I drive her to work and I had to stop to let her throw up like twice. I felt horrible. Turns out she was pregnant with someone else's kid. Last steak she ever got from me. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Stranger. Really glad that one of the saddest moments of my young adult life has become a good laugh for me and others. Along with being my highest rated comment ever. He didn't really hide it. But I never knew the story of how his first wife passed away until we were engaged. I only knew that she had CF. And that she died too soon. I didn't know that he came home from work, found her passed out and blue, and rushed her to the hospital himself, where she later died. He told me about it one evening when we were sitting in front of the Christmas tree. The whole story came pouring out of him. And I just hugged him and listened. His mother died 6 months after his first wife passed away. And to hear him tell it, it nearly broke him. I think it healed his heart a little to talk about it. And I know that it made me love him even more somehow. I'm just grateful that he was willing to open his heart up to love again. He is an awesome man and the best thing that has ever happened to me. Edit. Thank you for the gold. Kind stranger. This one is for Dare Bear, for Dibby, and for me. We just had my wife's funeral yesterday. Your story made me feel much more confident about the future. Thank you for sharing. She hadn't done her taxes in 3 years because it made her anxious. Turns out she was owed 7k from the government. He actually bought his favorite sweatshirt from Walmart. At first he told me Costco cause he thought it made him sound a little classier. My GF swoops her hair over her left eye. I thought it was just an emo hairstyle until I found out she was blind in one eye. As someone that is blind in one eye, I have a prosthetic that makes it look natural. Although if you make eye contact you may think it's a lazy eye. When do you feel would be the right time to inform a partner? You have a golden opportunity here. Just make dinner for them. Something that requires chopping. And while they're in another room, make a pain yelp and then scream for them to come. Then pop your eye out and place it next to the knife. Bonus points if you can squirt some ketchup around it and on your face. 2. One of my exes waited months to tell me that her godparents, that she lived with, were actually her ex-boyfriend's parents. I actually didn't mind it until he moved back in. My GF, now wife, and I had been living together for 2 years before I told her I watched Star Trek. I was worried she would think I was too nerdy. It was the early 90s. I had a VCR at my parents' house and I would have dinner with them once a week. And then watch the latest episode of The Next Generation. It all came out one week when my GF and I were both over for dinner. We were getting ready to leave. When my mom says, "Aren't you going to watch Trek first?" It was all out in the open. My GF immediately felt bad for me, saying she would never have judged me for watching Trek. She even watched a few episodes with me I had on VHS at my parents' home. She liked it and thought the stories and themes were good. Trying to assuage my fears further, a few months later she surprised me with tickets for both of us to a Star Trek convention that was coming to town. So we went. After about 30 minutes walking around the con, seeing autograph booths, vendors, and cosplayers, She leaned into me and whispered lovingly in my ear, "You were right not to tell me. I just found out that he's scared of snails and slugs after almost 13 years of marriage." Not me, but my parents. My mom told me a few years ago that on their first date they went out for pizza. My mom's favorite is ham and pineapple, and my dad says, "Great. I love pineapple on pizza." Fast forward years and years of my dad eating ham and pineapple. He finally confesses that he hates it. He actually ate it as pizza for 20 years instead of just admitting that he hates it. This was one of her life lessons for me when I started dating. He liked to punch walls and himself when angry. Until we were married, our disagreements were always discussions. Sometimes heated, sometimes angry, but never violent, and always worked out to a solution in the end. It was great. It was the way adults should argue. The first fight after the wedding. He put his fist through the wall of our rented apartment. He also slammed his head into the bathroom door. Why the change? I've been holding back my anger. But now that we're married, I know you can deal with the real me. Up until then, he'd been way more angry and violent than I'd known about. But had hidden it during fights so I wouldn't leave. Yeah, we're not married anymore. For many reasons. But one of them being that I never, ever felt safe to disagree with him after that. My SO didn't reveal until much later that a sizable inheritance came with the relationship. It was a wonderful surprise, especially because we were secure financially without it. This is one of the times that it makes complete sense to hide something from a SO. At least for a little while. Even if someone isn't a gold digger from the start. A looming inheritance can certainly change people. That he hates sheets. About 4 years into the relationship he proclaimed that sheets wrap around him when he sleeps and he refuses to use them anymore. Apparently he's always hated sheets but just never mentioned it. Like the fitted sheets or flat sheets? I absolutely refuse to sleep with a flat sheet. The flat sheet. He doesn't care about the fitted sheet. But he rolls around a lot when he sleeps, so the flat sheet wraps around him. My friend is dating a farmer. No, they didn't meet on Farmersonly.com. They did meet online though. Anywho. They've been dating for 5 months at this time and he refuses to take her to his town and meet his family because he's had a lot of girls date him for what he owns. She waited a year and had no problems and he finally brought her to his town and house, and his family is a multimillionaire family. They own like 15 farms across the US. Their house is a ducking mansion. She was super scared to be in the relationship after that. They are still dating but she tried to buy her own things and not depend on him and his money. He could do magic tricks. We were together for 13 years and one day he pulls out a deck of cards and says pick a card. Any card. Ducker got my card and everything. Just as smooth as can be. Never did it again. OMG. My husband. After we were married, dated 3 years, busts out and turns a restaurant napkin into an origami crane. This guy's not suave at all. Typical awkward engineer. I am completely baffled as to why he didn't try to impress me with this at the beginning. Well, I'm the one that hid something from her, that I was a smoker. It got to the point where I'd hidden it that long that to admit it would be pretty much lying by omission. And I really liked her. And that's the story of how I quit smoking. Well, after 2 years my ex let me know that she liked women as much as I did. Problem. Turns out wife likes women. Not problem. Turns out wife likes women too. I don't know if she hid it or just didn't discuss it. But I didn't learn of her massive student loan debt until we were engaged. I think people don't really discuss finances as well as they should. It is a touchy subject. Especially if you have a lot of debt in the first place. Absolutely. Finances need to be openly discussed before moving in together and definitely before upon getting engaged. It's an uncomfortable but important convo to have. My ex-girlfriend hid the fact that she was on bipolar medication before we moved in together in NC after moving from NY. She then stopped taking her medication. and then quit her job, leaving me as the sole income for the two of us. I was 23 years old, and this was my first long-term relationship. We broke up a month after she quit her job. That was a very long month. It took me 4 years to tell my now wife I do not like my sandwiches cut in half. She still brings it up. My uncle hid a walnut allergy from his ex-girlfriend many years ago. She found out when he had to be hospitalized after he ate some walnut brownies she made for him. He knew about the walnuts. He just wanted to be nice. When I was in college, I had no money and shaggy hair. So I was wandering around the dorms looking for someone who knew how to cut hair. A cute girl overheard me and said, "Hey, I know how to cut hair." She gave me a haircut in the hallway and then asked if I wanted to go to Steak and Shake. I said sure. It's been 13 years. We're married. And she still gives me haircuts. About 2 years into the relationship, she confessed that she had no idea how to cut hair but really wanted an excuse to hang out with me. She did it in the hallway and asked me to Steak and Shake because she didn't want me to look in a mirror and see the results. She's actually pretty good at it now, though. So, when I was younger, my group of friends had this tradition of messing with people who passed out, drawing on them, stacking things on the BTC. Anyway, one night I noticed there were a lot of people passed out. So I started bingo daubing everyone on the forehead. Then I realized I was the only one awake. Not only that, but I had bingo daubed the forehead of a girl I really liked. I didn't want her to get pissed off at me for bingo daubing her forehead, so I concluded, in my drunken stupor, that I had no other choice than to bingo daub myself, so I did. Years went by and it was always a mystery who bingo daubed everyone. The girl I liked at that party had been my girlfriend for several years now, and I finally decided to come clean. She thought it was hilarious. But let me tell you, that ink they use in those bingo daubers is really hard to clean off your forehead. I found out that my significant other hides candy from me in her car. In fairness, she does this because she likes the occasional sweet, whereas I attack a bag of gummy bears like a starved hyena. He brought me to a house party just a couple of weeks after we started dating. He pointed out a young lady and said he'd been dating her before me. What he didn't mention was that he failed to tell her that the relationship was over. No wonder she was giving me the stinky all night. I'm also 99% sure he was seeing someone else before we decided to get divorced, since he was spending all his time at the place his new girlfriend worked. Furthermore, I'm 99% sure he met someone else before they broke up, several years later, based on how they met and when they started dating. There's a pattern here. The pattern is that my ex is a ratty relationship partner who exits a relationship, finds someone else, and only then does his partner know he's finished. Personally, I was the opposite with my so. I laid it all out on the table right away. History of eating disorder now recovered. Depression. Anxiety. Self-harm. Abusive childhood. Etc. Because I wanted him to know what he was getting himself into. I was his first everything and I sensed such a sweet innocence in him. It didn't seem fair to have him get emotionally invested in me and then feel trapped with a crazy chick due to guilt. I gave him every opportunity to bail and would not have blamed him one bit for running away. I was past a lot of my issues, but I still had quite a bit of emotional baggage when we met that I was still working on. Instead of scaring him off, he actually respected my honesty and fell for me harder. Now we're married and expecting our first child. Funny how things work out. My ex-husband revealed 2 years into our marriage that he didn't want kids. Had never wanted kids. And had only told me he did because he knew I wouldn't have married him otherwise. Which is true. We had talked about kids before even being engaged, so it's not like we hadn't discussed it on more than one occasion. I stuck around for another 2 years hoping to make it work, but ultimately decided the marriage wasn't worth saving. We had other issues in addition to that, but that was the big deal breaker for me. Luckily, I'm dating someone now who is absolutely amazing. It's like night and day compared to my first marriage. that he had been temporarily sent to a place for troubled kids when he was younger. As a child he had blown up in class to the point where he had been screaming that he was going to kill everybody. Context: he was a little boy from Taiwan who barely spoke any English at the time and had just moved to the US. Some other kid in class kicked him and he retaliated. Teacher caught him and he couldn't speak well enough to explain that he didn't start it, and was the only one that got punished. He didn't like that and started getting agitated, and when no one understood he began yelling what he didn't know how to say. School called authorities and he got taken away. Stayed in that facility for a few weeks being fed meds and all that. He told me that the only reason he was compliant in there was because he was scared he would never see his mom again. He never told anyone else because he didn't want people to think he was crazy when he was really only a frightened little kid no one tried to listen to. My ex told me he didn't have a Facebook. About a year into dating, long distance. He was a suggested friend. It didn't bother me initially, because it's possible he didn't use it or think it was important. Nope. He was very active with his IRL friends' family, so I knew. And listed himself as single. When I told him about it, he didn't give me a reason why. Just told me to deal with it. He didn't have a reason to go behind my back or hide me from his friends' family. It bothered me that the ones who knew of me went along with it. It felt like he was hiding something, but I never found out. That was the beginning of our spiral downwards. Being long distance was hard enough, but he kept giving me reasons to not trust him. We broke up a year after that, and boy, was it messy.